Before starting, make sure that the contents included in your kit correspond to the list of contents provided. This will not only acquaint you with the various parts included in the kit, but it will also enable you to make any complaints which might be necessary regarding missing parts. But check carefully. Some complaints are often made before a thorough check has been carried out. As you can see, the tools required for model shipbuilding are modest: a pencil, a ruler and tape, hammer, cement and pins, a hobby knife and clothespins, a wire cutter and tweezers, sandpaper, a polishing block and a small set square. Things in fact which you probably already have on hand. Attach the building plate to a secure foundation. Use a base which is slightly larger than the keel of the ship. Then secure the keel to the base plate with 5 pins, small ones, which can be removed again without damage to the model. Begin with the 3 middle frames, numbers 7, 8 and 9. Use a set square to make sure that the frames are positioned at right angles to the keel. Once glued in place, it's a good idea to let the frames dry thoroughly before continuing. Check the distance from frame to frame to ensure that the frames are straight. Use white cement for this gluing operation. When all the frames and the deck have been positioned, the frames can be sanded. Next, the first planking strips can be mounted. Begin at the top. You can hold the planking in place with clothespins, clips or pins. Again, let the first strip dry completely before proceeding. Attach the next planking strip with pins and remember to shape both ends before gluing. Check carefully to ensure that this planking fits to the first strip. All the planking has now been positioned on both halves of the hull, following the same procedure as just outlined. Sand with fine sandpaper. Fill any cracks there might be with glue and sand once again, so that the cracks are filled up with the fine sawdust. Glue the 2 halves of the hull together. You can use tape to hold the halves together until dry. In the following steps, putty, a putty knife, paint, varnish and a paintbrush are required. The hull must now be stopped. Use a white lead putty, which is available in tubes. First apply a primer, standard white or grey non-gloss paint. When the paint is dry, sand lightly, then stop and sand at least twice or until the hull is completely smooth. This is a very important process if your model is to achieve a truly professional look. When the stopping and sanding process is completed, paint the hull in the colours indicated. First, paint the model black above the waterline, which is marked off using a block and pencil. When dry, put tape all the way around the waterline and apply a coat of primer. Remember that it's best to remove the tape before the primer is completely dry. The deck is lacquered with a dull lacquer. No filling can be used here, and it's thus recommended to apply a thin coat of lacquer at first. The lacquer is then ground and the second coat of lacquer applied. The masts are assembled. Place the various taper pins on the main drawing and fit them accordingly. Please note that the masts are supposed to be put through a hole in the deck and should thus be a little longer. They are assembled with fittings to match according to the drawing, and in fact only a little patience will be needed here. Assemble the cabins as shown on the drawings. Paint and sand before mounting on the deck, and make sure that the cabin parts fit the curvature of the deck. Use a pin and clothespin when painting small components. It makes the process much easier. Position the completed masts and cabins. Here is one of the most difficult tasks, the rigging. Make sure that the mast is straight when mounting the shrouds. Start by putting cement on the bottom of the mast. Next, measure using a strip and a pencil. When the mast is completely horizontal, assemble the shrouds. Sewing the sails requires the use of a sewing machine. If you don't have a machine available, you can cut out the sails exactly, following the markings. However, using a sewing machine gives by far the best results. For the remaining details, study the drawings and follow the building instructions. As you can see, the rigging runs from the top down to the turnbuckles, which are attached to the hull. Here you can see how the sails are attached to the boom and how the blocks are positioned for hauling up and down. Here are the shrouds, the ropes which hold the mast in place. You'll have no trouble, by the way, finding the various points and comparing them to the drawing. And here we have the completed model, a pleasure for the eye, and maybe the first ship model you have built from the 600, 700 or 800 series. This is the first step on the way to becoming an expert model builder. Series 700, which you can see here, is the next step on the way. And finally, the Regina, a gold medal winner from Series 800. Once you've built this model, you can manage any model building task imaginable. Should you still be in doubt, ask your nearest dealer. He has brochures explaining the entire system.